Welcome back to the E-Team Sponsor podcast. I'm Sean Connor, CEO with E-Team Sponsor. Pleasure to be joined today with Shannon Pivovar. She is the head softball coach at Sioux Falls out in South Dakota, Division II program. Prior to that, she was an assistant at South Dakota State, and previous to that, she was a GA at Wayne State down in Nebraska. So, Shannon, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I know we kind of started to kick it around a little bit. How are things there in Sioux Falls since the world has changed here over the course of the last 5 or 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's been an adjustment, I would say. We're lucky. We're in a part of the country that it's slow moving in a sense that we haven't seen the big, huge surges yet. And we haven't seen that, the things that we're seeing on the news on the coast. But, it's kind of starting to get here now. It's shelter in place in a sense, do what you can, stop the spread. There's not a ton of normalcy to life. And I think that's been the biggest adjustment for all of us is, what is this new, better, different normal going to be? And at what point does that start? Because right now it's just every day, you wake up, you watch the governor talk, and then you go on with your day. And then the next day, you kind of do the same thing. So like I said, we're lucky in the sense that we haven't had the numbers that everybody else has. Now I think that's going to come at some point. I think we're going to get that surge, but it's just trying to navigate day by day right now.
Yeah, it seems to be what we hear from a lot of coaches. It's, take this thing one day at a time because information is coming at you so fast and it changes daily. So well, talk to us a little bit about just, your softball program in terms of how have you been communicating with the student athletes? How have you maybe been communicating with your athletic director, within your athletic department? Give us the day in the life right now.
Absolutely. So one of the interesting things about all spring sports, I think, is that we went through a period of really like mourning. I mean, our season was drop dead and finalized. Everything was done and very unexpected, obviously. And so a lot of what we've done with our kids so far has been Zoom calls and Microsoft team meetings of, okay, how do you do a schedule now? How do you plan out your days? How do you do these online courses? Because they were used to 20 hours a week of softball and then they don't have that. So it's given us, I love Division II because I love building relationships with our kids. I think that's the reason that I coach. That's what drives me every day is I want our kids to leave as better people than who they came in as. And so this, as crazy as it sounds, this opportunity to get them to know them on that level and to work with them every single day via text or a phone call or a group me message or whatever it may be. Between my assistant and I, we're checking in all the time with these kids to make sure that they are okay. It's about the mental side of stuff right now more than can we make you a better hitter. So that's kind of been our approach is, every week we have a call for about an hour and a half that we ask our kids to hop on. And last week we did a scavenger hunt on the call. They had to go around their house and find random things. The week before we pretended like we were on vacation. So everybody had their background and then they dressed up wherever they would want to be. So trying to bring light to some of these things that, we get texts at 11 o'clock at night that are just, Coach, this is tough. Like I'm struggling right now. What can we do? And so trying to keep some light and some good vibes, I think has been the biggest thing for us. Our athletic department, we were in Florida on spring break when all of this kind of exploded. And we had to come back. We switched our flights and came back early. And so the athletic department was pretty much gone. The university, like only essential management team was there and everybody else was kind of off. So a lot of what we're getting is at the beginning, it was almost daily emails with just blasted information. And now it's kind of, we'll hop on a Zoom call again, Microsoft Teams call, and just get updated with what you can. The problem is that it's so unknown that, you can talk about it one day and the next day it's going to be different. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what we're doing. Like I said, the biggest thing for us was getting through that initial, our season died and ended, And now how do we cope with everything else along with everybody else? Sure. And so that's kind of how we're doing what we're doing. And, I don't see it changing in the next few weeks. Well, I think we have maybe 3 weeks left of classes and then finals, however those are going to go. So I think it'll be very similar as we continue through the rest of this, just to get through.
Yeah. Interesting. Really some great insight there too. I mean, I think there's a lot of coaches, I'm sure, that were probably in your same situations, on the road, traveling, spring sport, and all of a sudden, well, we gotta cut this short. We got to get back, and the health and safety of your student athletes and your coaching staff is it's so important. You've got student athletes that are in your program. You talked about some of the things that you're doing with your student athletes that are there now, and mental health is a big part of that. Talk to us about, next year's recruiting class. How has this affected, how you're recruiting, who you're recruiting, the eligibility, deal that's come down from the NCAA. Talk to us about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so we're in a good place, and we're lucky enough that our administration at USF has agreed that our student athletes can come back, our seniors, and that they will get that year paid for. So there's other teams, even in our conference, that aren't, and we're very, very, very fortunate that that's the case. The only thing it does is that next year our roster is going to have a couple more kids than maybe we thought. But we've been very upfront with our recruits and just kind of explained to them that this is an opportunity for you to learn from a couple of kids who have been 3-4 year starters. What better chance do you have than learning everything that they got to do and the things they went through and how they grew and how they developed, and get to see them in their prime. Like, these are good athletes and great leaders, which is better for us. But I think it's a cool opportunity if you understand how to embrace it. And that's just what we're trying to preach to our incoming kids, that, you may have thought you were going to come in and step foot on right away, and you still may. Like, if you're putting in the time and effort right now, you're still going to beat out kids that you would have originally. But now you get to work, maybe as a middle infielder right next to somebody who was now a 4-year, going to be 5-year starter. And that's a cool opportunity for those kids to have. What I think it's going to affect a ton more is the juniors and sophomores in high school right now. Because, to be honest, our numbers will be a little bit big next year. I can still control right now what we recruit in that junior and sophomore class. And so knowing what all of our underclassmen are going to do, we're about 50-50 with kids that want to stay and play this extra year and kids that want to go. But that's, 8 more kids than I thought I was going to have that next year even. So that's the group that I think is really going to be affected by it, is the kids that, really had their sights set on somewhere and had visited even other places already and thought they were going to go and thought they were number one on somebody's 2021 recruiting list. And now all of a sudden we have a sophomore who's going to stick around and is going to be here 3 more years. So that I think will get interesting. Now, even when kids come into my program, I tell them, if you want to play college softball, there is a place for you to play. And so I think it's just going to be now adjusting and finding where is that fit and who does have the ability to, broaden their rosters to 27, 28. And is that something you're okay with? I think there's a lot of unanswered questions out there, especially with that sophomore and junior class. And, it's exciting. It gives kids some motivation to work hard to show what they're going to do. Now we just have to keep our fingers crossed that we get out on the field sometimes so that they can show it. But
so they can actually do it. Yeah,
exactly. But like I said, I think it just depends on how you approach it and how you look at it. And if you look at it as an opportunity that, okay, now I can really show my stuff and I can learn from some better people and I can get to where I really want to be, then I think you're okay. If you look at it as, man, now I don't know where I'm going to go, I think you're going to find yourself in kind of a sinkhole. Yeah. So that's kind of how we're approaching it.
I love it. I think that's a great way to approach it. I mean, you've got, there's an opportunity there, right? Yep. There's an opportunity. And I think what's unique about what you just mentioned is we've had conversations with coaches where it really seems to be so centric on, those seniors who we all feel terrible for, right? For not to be able to have that senior year and they miss those moments. And just really special time. I'm sure you remember as a student athlete your senior year. I do too. It's some of my fondest memories, and not being able to have that, and taken away, certainly, crushing. But they talk a lot about those student athletes and then the incoming freshmen, but you addressed, the student athletes, the sophomores and the juniors. That's, it's going to have a domino effect, and it's interesting that you're taking that perspective. I think it's great. I think a lot of coaches will be able to take something from that. Mm-hmm. In terms of, speaking of opportunity, we'll get into one of the things that we like to talk about here at eTeam Sponsor, and is our mission, which is we want to unlock opportunity through the power of athletics, and our fundraising platform, bringing money in to help people raise money so they can provide more opportunity for their respective programs or athletic departments. We like being able to have people share their own story and how athletics has unlocked opportunity for them. So Shannon, share with us, how has athletics unlocked opportunity for you?
I was very fortunate growing up that any sport that my brother, sister, and I wanted to get involved in, we were able to. My dad was a sports writer for the paper in Omaha, Nebraska for 40 years. And that kind of just, whether we wanted to or not, we were pulled to some different events. And he would pick us up from school at 3 o'clock and drive us down to Lincoln to go to a Husker football practice because he had to interview a couple guys. My brother and I were at a Omaha Royals, so AAA program, baseball game, and up in the press box with my dad playing catch with a tennis ball, and it went out the window and rolled down the screen onto the field. So sports has been like intertwined in our lives since we were born. And I don't know any other platform that gives you the wide opportunities that sports does. I played volleyball, track, soccer, softball, basketball. I was a baton twirler for 13 years.
Wow.
You name it. Yeah. You name it, all the way across the board, we did it. And it got me to where I am now, obviously, but it taught me motivation. It taught me time management. It taught me how to build relationships. It taught me in a lot of unfortunate, like having to learn through it lessons. It taught me how to deal with failure and how to deal with being disappointed. And, I tell my kids all the time now that if I had known when I was, in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, the way my body language was telling people my emotions and the way I was treating my parents after we lost and things like that, I would have completely switched it around. But you learned through all that and you grew. So that's part of why I do what I do, because I think it's so important to use those lessons that athletics has taught us. Growing up I grew up in Ralston, Nebraska, which is just right outside Omaha, technically like a suburb of Omaha, and played sports within our community forever. Still have friendships of teammates from when we were, 6, 7, 8 years old. We put a wiffle ball yard without our parents knowing in the backyard, and one tree was first base, the other tree was second base, and we would play. We had lights on the top of our house, and we would play for hours and hours and hours. And I just think those experiences and those things have really just shaped who I am, and I want to give that back to everybody. I want, as I said earlier, I want every single kid who wants to play college sports to have the opportunity to do it. Right now, Michigan baseball from the College World Series last year, and their coach just talking about finding those niches of kids that can't afford to play summer ball and can't afford to do all these travel things, and kids should have that opportunity because of the things that athletics teaches you. I've been greatly blessed with amazing coaches along the way. And I think back to even like Little League soccer, and each of you get your playing time, and afterwards you get your treat and your drink, and that's special in and of itself. And my college coach is honestly the sole reason that really pushed me to get into coaching. And I just think of some of the experiences and lessons and opportunities that if you don't have those coaches and you don't have positive parents and you don't have opportunities within your community, then the game can't teach you that all the things that it can teach you. So I think it's kind of a wide, broad subject when I think about what athletics has done for me and what it's taught me and where it's, you know, positioned me now. But I think it's all of those little things along the way that have got me to have the confidence to apply for an assistant coaching job, to apply for a head coaching job, to accept to be on your podcast. Like, there's just things like that if I would have told myself 10 years ago, hey, this is where you're going to be, I don't know that without the confidence building and all of that stuff that comes along with athletics that I would have been there. And so I think that's kind of a cool byproduct in a sense of what athletics does for you.
Absolutely. Well said. I mean, you know, the thing that jumps out to me is you mentioned relationships and how important the relationships you made through your career in athletics, but also the opportunity it created for you to grow. And I think that's something that's really, you know, if I could go back and speak to student athletes again anywhere, and maybe this is a platform to do that too, but it's let these kids know, hey, there's a lot of chaos going on and uncertainty, but man, there's some great opportunities to grow right now and get outside your comfort zone. There's opportunities to grow, and athletics is so unique in being able to provide that. And as testimony to your story, like you just mentioned, there's plenty of opportunities. And I would say for student athletes now, take advantage of that. Take advantage of that opportunity. That's great. One of the things we also like to talk about is leadership. Leadership we know is important as an important part of any athletic department. It's important in any athletic team, you know, organization, program. So we always like to ask our coaches that come on, our athletic directors, leadership. What does leadership mean to you, and how are you choosing to lead today?
Yep. I think when I think of a leader, I think of somebody who isn't afraid to get in the trenches with their kids or with their employees, or however you look at it. I think of a servant leader. I think of somebody who isn't telling people what to do, but rather finding ways to encourage people to come along with them. When I think back again to coaches and leaders that I've had, captains that I've been involved with in different teams, the ones that really stood there and shook their finger at me are the ones that I tended to defy, whereas the ones that felt like they were empowering you, whether they knew they were or not, but just the way that they got right in with you and handled situations alongside of you to lead you. That's what we preach. USF is huge with servant leadership. As a university, a culture of service is the university's motto. So how do you lead people by serving people? And so within our program, I mean, we did the John Gordon Energy Bus last semester. We did,
nice.
We do articles today. Actually, in our Zoom this afternoon, we're reading an excerpt from Chop Wood, Carry Water with our kids and going through that. So we just try and find those people who can take all of the emotions and everything and write it really eloquently so that it you know, kind of registers with our kids. But I really think that, you know, trying times and hard times, and that's when real true leaders that lead by example, that are servant leaders, that's when they shine. And so, you know, if you're in an organization right now that you have somebody that's kind of helping you along and guiding you through those things and there for questions and there to help you, those are good leaders that you want to be a part of. And those are organizations that you want to stick with. And so as much information as we can give to our kids to set them up to hopefully be in those positions one day, we're doing our job right then. You know, we don't look at, okay, only seniors are leaders, because I think that there's qualities in every single kid that can be a leader. And can you lead by example? Can you be somebody that maybe you do everything right, but you don't see the playing time on the field? So can you be that person that they can come to on the bench and talk to? Can you be, our 4.0 student that is applying to grad school that's gotten accepted everywhere you're going, and you can be that type of leader on the academic side for everybody. I think it's about understanding what you're best at. It's about finding how to lead by motivating, by bringing people with you. And then at the end of the day, it's about getting your hands dirty and doing a little bit of the work. And I think you see that, you watch Shark Tank, you watch professional games, you watch all these things all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other, and successful companies and businesses and teams and organizations are run by the people who weren't afraid to get their hands dirty at the beginning. And so that's kind of how we approach leadership. I think, like I said, USF is a great place for me to be because I'm all bought into the servant leadership. I think that's the best way to motivate people. Plus, I think that builds the best relationships, and it's not one person at the top talking down. It's let's flatten that out a little bit and work across the spectrum together to get things done.
I love it. Horizontal leadership, servant leadership. I love the chop wood, carry water. That's fantastic. I love it. Leaders are readers, Coach. So that's awesome that you've got your squad doing that. Have you read? Speaking of books, have you read "Leaders Eat Last" by Simon Sinek?
I have not.
Okay, I would highly recommend any coach that's listening right now. I think that it's probably one of the most impactful books that I've read, and we happened to just read it before this whole pandemic started, and I'm so glad that we did. I think it's a great read for people that really are looking to, I'd say, find a way to lead now, because it is unprecedented. It's really interesting. There's some things in there, Coach, that I think that I personally have been sharing with our team. We talk a lot about mental health. It talks a lot about biologically, like chemically, how things work when you lead a certain way. And if I were coaching today, that would be probably book number one I'd have my kids read. So,
all right.
Yeah,
I wrote it down.
Check that one out for sure. Cool. All right. Well, we'll get into a little bit of the personal side of it. We'll have some fun with you. So Ralston, Nebraska, correct?
Ralston, Nebraska.
Ralston, Nebraska. All right. So if our travels take us to Ralston, Nebraska, and we'll do a little rapid fire here. We come back to Ralston, Nebraska. Where's our I'm a big breakfast guy. I'm a foodie. I want a big plate, greasy spoon place. Where am I going for breakfast?
My mom's kitchen. That's probably the best place.
All right.
I'm more of a authentic Mexican, which I know sounds funny in the middle of America, but there's a little restaurant called Maria's, and it is to die for. They have like flower shells that they put in and they kind of blow up, and then they stuff them full of everything that you could want. Great bean dip, great flour chip. I mean, that has been honestly one of our go-tos. If we have to get something right now, Takeout Tuesday, super popular, get down there and go there. So I would say if you want the best food in Ralston, I would go to Maria's.
Maria's, got it. Maria's Mexican. I'm putting it down. We got that one covered. All right. Well, you growing up in Ralston, Nebraska, it sounds like Dad being working for the newspaper and covering sports. Sounds like you had your fair share of sports opportunities. So if we'll go two things. One, if you weren't with Dad and you were on your own and you're in Ralston, Nebraska, what'd you do for fun? And then number two would be maybe tell us your fondest memory, your favorite memory of something that your dad drug you to.
All right. If we were on our own, so as silly as it sounds, we would all drive up to the Taco Bell and sit in the Taco Bell parking lot and eat food and sit and hang out and chat. And it was kind of our version of Scoop the Loop, if you've ever heard of that, out in small towns. I mean, we're not like teeny tiny town, but Ralston's kind of its own little town outside of Omaha. So we would do that. Friday night football games were huge for our city. Probably just, supporting another sporting event or something like that. With my dad, man, we went everywhere. We were lucky enough to go to, when the Huskers played in the Rose Bowl, we went out there as a family with him. Anytime that the Omaha Royals were home, they're the Storm Chasers now, but the Royals were home, we would be there. 1 year for my birthday, my dad actually got me up in the press box of a Husker football game, and it happened to be the Matt Davison catch where they were playing Mizzou, and it kicked off the foot, and Matt dove under and caught it. And so that was probably one of the coolest. I think, there were some events where, especially when he was just going to interview people, that were like, oh, do we have to go? Like, we have to sit through that. But like I said, like, I wouldn't trade those for anything now,
Yeah,
so
sure.
They just kind of piled up in our library of experiences that we had and things we got to do. And so we were super fortunate.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. Well, good. Well, thank you for taking us down that trip down memory lane there for you. The last thing that we like to do is we like to leave everyone with an empowering message. At E-Team Sponsor, one of our mantras is educate and empower. And the empowerment aspect of it, we know, is for most coaches that whether it comes naturally or not, it's something that they definitely focus on. So if you had a empowering message that you could share with our listeners today, again, high school and college coaches, athletic directors that are out there right now, what empowering message would you give them today?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've really, really, really learned through good and bad and helpful and unhelpful situations with other people is you really just got to love what you do. And when you love what you do and you love who you're working with and you aren't afraid to let them know that you love them and that they're doing a great job and that you feel that you're moving in the right direction, that's when special things happen. If you go out and you look at our social media, you look at any of mine or USF softball, we care about our team as a family, and we talk about how special we are, and special in lots of ways with some of us, but how much we love each other and care about each other. And I think that when you realize that by being a good human being and loving and caring genuinely for other people around you, regardless of what level you're playing at, coaching at, leading, young, old, it doesn't matter. You will start to find some of those relationships, and you'll start to build things that you never knew probably that you were capable of. So that's the biggest thing. And I think in these times of uncertainty, that's something that you can control. You can control the way that you approach things. You can control to get out of bed in the morning and attack the day, or to sleep until noon. You have that opportunity. And while some of it is harder, I mean, you talked about kind of your makeup, and some of that is more difficult, and I get that. You still have a little bit of hope right now, regardless of your situation, and you have that ability. So be a good human, surround yourself with people who love you, who you love, and good things will happen.
I love it. That's a great message. Great message. Well, good. Well, Shannon, we really appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you working with us. We appreciate you sharing some great stories here today. And I know that coaches and ADs across the country are definitely going to get a lot out of this. So, again, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to look forward to catching up with you down the road. Hopefully, the girls, I can't wait to hear how chop wood, carry water, how that resonates with the team, and continue on with the servant leadership there at USF. So, Shannon, thank you very much for coming on. We'll catch up with you down the road.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.